the nation's capital, the Conservative Caucus presents Conservative Roundtable, an in-depth look at today's most important issues.
Welcome to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Conservative Roundtable, now being broadcast coast to coast and available for viewing on YouTube. We're privileged to have as our guest for this broadcast Brad O'Leary, who has extensive experience in radio, in television, and with the print media. He's produced all kinds of television specials and programs. He was on the radio for 10 years with NBC Westwood One. He was the head of the American Association of Political Consultants. And during the recent presidential campaign, he authored a best-selling book, The Audacity of Deceit. And you can guess about whom it was written. And off the air, Brad told me that he was mentored by two men whom I greatly admired. One was John Connally, the former governor of Texas, and the other was John Tower, former U.S. Senator from Texas. And I had the great privilege of being able to spend a little bit of time with both of these men. Brad, what led you to the career in politics and communications at which you have excelled?
Well, politics came first. And
from Missouri?
From Missouri. I got involved in Jack Danforth's campaign for the Senate against Stu Symington.
The best thing he ever did was Clarence Thomas.
That's true.
Anyway, go ahead.
That's true. And Tower was chairman of the senatorial committee at the time, and he and I became very close. I was very young at the time. I thought I knew how to win the race, and no one would listen to me. Tower listened to me. Not only listened to me, would come in every month and get the campaign to do his ideas, which were really my ideas. And we went from 27-23 down, losing, to losing the race, eventually 49.5 to 50.5.
But it paved the way for subsequent victory.
Yes, and it also was a friendship I started with Tower, and he got me to move to Texas and get involved in his 72 campaign.
Tower had a very interesting career. When LBJ became vice president, there was a special election, I guess, for his Senate seat, a great many candidates. And Republicans hadn't elected a senator, and I think he was the only Republican in the race.
Oh, there were three.
Were there three?
Yeah, there were three, but it was 58 candidates. Yeah. And in those days, the Democrats didn't have primaries in the state because they never believed that there was anyone as a Republican that could ever beat them in an election. So why have two elections? Just have an open primary. You pick your winner, and you don't have to have a general election.
And as a result of that chaos, John Tower emerged as a U.S. Senator.
Correct.
Now you have
and
been...
Texas became Republican.
Absolutely. Very interesting. You have been involved in opinion research.
Right.
And recently, you worked with Zogby International and your own entity, the O'Leary Report, in polling some 4,523 voters about key questions. And I studied these questions, and what came home to me is that the American people are still a heck of a lot more conservative than Obama is.
They're center-right.
Yeah.
The American people are center-right. He's not. And, he's a wonderful style person. He looks great, looks like a Hollywood star. His wife is beautiful. His children are wonderful. And he gets high poll marks on style, but he gets low poll marks on substance. None of the things he's doing to the American public really support.
Reviewing these results, which you were kind enough to share with me, I think that 2010 could be a great year for the Republicans.
No, I think it can be a wonderful year.
Yeah.
I think his effort to disarm Americans in the things he's attempting to do will turn out an awful lot of people that didn't vote in the last election.
If John, and I'm not the first person to say this, but I have no doubt that if John McCain had opposed the bailout instead of voted for it, he probably would have been elected president.
Probably. I think that the American public was very confused looking for leadership, and they were scared at the time, probably still are scared. And to have both presidents say this is the way, or both candidates say this is the way to go, passed it. I think if McCain had stood his ground, we might see a different outcome.
Now let me, if I may, review
Sure.
some of these results. Question, should members of Congress who received campaign donations from AIG return the contributions? 73% said yes.
Yes, that's a lot of Democrats that have said yes, return the money. And, you know, you have to say there's over $1 million that AIG gave in political bonuses to members of Congress, and it should get returned. Dodd got $100,000, Schumer got $100,000, and the president got $100,000. They voted for the AIG packages. So if they want AIG employees to return the money, then they should do the morally acceptable thing and not be hypocrites. They should return the $1 million that they got in political bonuses.
Why don't Chris Matthews and Keith Olbermann bring that up?
Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah, but that's a very good
Because
point.
most of this money went to Democrats.
Yeah.
And some of their favorite people, like Obama and Dodd, got enormous amounts of money.
Dodd could lose his next election.
Well, I don't think Dodd will make it out of the primary. You know, his wife also was on one of the AIG boards, and it's just morally unacceptable to place yourself above the people in your state.
Did you know his dad, Tom Dodd?
Yeah.
I knew him slightly, who was a strong anti-communist and a pretty conservative U.S. senator.
Right, very conservative.
And his son is very different than his dad was in terms of the way he votes. I was an admirer of his father. He was one of the best Democrats around. Now, here's a question I really get a kick out of. In regard to the bank rescue plans and economic stimulus, do you feel the Obama administration is trying to do too much, is disorganized, needs more time, or is right on target? I think the answers to this are hilarious.
Right.
40% feel the Obama administration is disorganized. Incredible. Only 14% think it's right on target. I'd say this guy, once people get sick of the style, if they do, he's in trouble. His administration's in trouble.
Right.
If you were making strategy for the Republicans, what would you do to exploit Obama's weaknesses?
Well, I'd continue to look at polls like this, and I wouldn't stop once he makes a mistake. I would drive it home over and over again, because this shows, what these polls shows in the subgroups, that independents, that young people 18 to 29, that Catholics, all of whom voted for him in the election, now are having buyer's remorse and all the things that he's brought up.
So when your opponent is down, don't let him up.
Well, you don't want him. Well, in the poll, one of the things we talk about is his attempt to have the military pay for their own medical bills. Now, that's insane. He's going to back off of that, but we shouldn't let the military forget that this is a man who, if they were hurt in combat, he wanted them to come home and go to a public hospital and use their insurance from their companies
during
to pay
the
for that
campaign,
bill.
he criticized McCain for saying that health benefits of private companies should be taxed. But now my understanding is he's pushing that very idea.
Right. He's going to go forward for some things, then he's going to pull back. But we can't let the public in these next 2 years forget what he tried in the first 2 years, that he will try again in the second 2 years, or if he gets elected, he's guaranteed to pass these things in the last 4 years. Or can I say one thing about the polling we do? I started doing polls 20 years ago, and I developed a relationship with John Sockby, who I really like as a pollster. but I went with John because he's philosophically very liberal. He has the opposite views of everything I do. So we spend sometimes hours or days arguing over how a question is asked.
Which really determines the answer.
Correct. And it's like the press will, some of these public polls will say, are you for gun control? Well, 69% of the American public may say they're for gun control, but if they ask the question in a different way, what do you think gun control means? Does it mean passing new laws, or does it mean taking the laws that are on the books and enforcing them?
Or having a steady aim, control.
Right, right. But only 22% of the American public want new laws. The public wants the laws on the books enforced.
Stay with us. We have to take a break. Folks, we're very fortunate to have Brad O'Leary sharing his insight and wisdom with us. Don't go away. There's plenty more to come.
Hi, I'm Congressman Tom Tancredo. You know, I just returned from a hearing on the southern border in a place called Brownsville, Texas. One of the participants in the hearing told us that for them, a border really doesn't exist between the United States and Mexico. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people have that attitude, that there are no such things as borders, that they really don't matter, that they're just lines on a map and nobody should pay attention to them, and that we're all just residents of the North American continent. Well, you know what? That's baloney. It's baloney, but only if you will do something about it to prove to the people of this country, and especially to your elected officials, that you know borders matter, that you know the sovereignty of this country is at risk, and that you will take action to make sure that they understand it. That action is best taken by calling your local talk radio stations, writing letters to the editor, and of course, letting members of Congress know that you know. That's the best thing. They're hoping, as a matter of fact, that no one really picks up on this issue of a North American trade association that essentially eliminates borders. But the fact is it's happening. You can see parts of it all of the time. So it's something that we need to stop. America, and I mean the United States of America, not the continent, but the United States of America is at stake. Do your part.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips, Chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Conservative Roundtable. And our guest is Brad O'Leary, author of this best-selling book, The Audacity of Deceit. And this book was published prior to the election. I strongly urge you to buy it and read it because it helps qualify Brad O'Leary as a prophet, because it predicts with extraordinary accuracy some of the incredibly bad policies that Barack Hussein Obama has been pursuing. So this book is a good read, and I urge you to get it. And it's published in association with WorldNet Daily, run by my good friend Joe Farah. Let me tell you a little bit more about our guest, Brad O'Leary. He's got a tremendous background as a political advisor, expert, manager, etc. And he's currently president of ATInews.com, an online magazine and information website that provides links to more than 750 newspapers and magazines worldwide. He's also chairman of the board of PM Direct Marketing, one of the country's leading perception management firms, representing numerous U.S. senators, corporations and associations. And as I indicated earlier, he's the former president of the American Association of Political Consultants. Brad, how do you have time to do all these things? How do you do it?
I think everybody has time to do whatever they want. They just have to manage it. It's a question of when you get up, you know what you're going to do every second of the day, and you don't waste time.
How did you acquire that discipline? Was that something you had as a young man?
I think that I always tried to do too much, and in doing too much, I realized very early that I had to be disciplined about when I did things. When Reagan was president, I had a closeness with him, and he always wanted me to do fundraising dinners he was doing for senators. And one week I did 4 presidential dinners in a 7-day period of time.
Wow.
And that took organization.
That certainly does. Was your family politically interested or inclined, your parents?
Not really. I mean, my great-grandparents were immigrants who came to this country. Well, I take that back. That is true, that my great-great-grandfather was one of the founders of the Irish Republican Brotherhood. And his newspaper that he started was probably the first direct mail means of communicating with people and raising money that anyone thought of. He was Irish, and the British had free postal service, so the British were paying for the Irish Republican Brotherhood to raise money.
Perfidious Albion.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And so that was your great-grandfather. And what about your grandfather and your dad?
No, they had no
Zero political interest.
Zero political interest.
Where did yours come from? How did you develop it?
I don't know.
At what age did it afflict you?
Probably when I was around 11 or 12. I started reading a lot of books.
That's the very time when I became interested.
Mm-hmm.
What books had the greatest impact on your thinking? I know you're a strong conservative. Was there a particular book or group of books that led you to that?
No, I think the first really comfortable book I read was John Tower. Before Barry Goldwater wrote a book, John Tower wrote a book about being conservative.
Really?
And then Barry Goldwater's book, and many books after that.
Very interesting. Well, I knew a man, a wonderful man, Charles Tremendous Jones, who published a list of the 100 books that greatly influenced him, and he asked me to come up with a list for him, which I did. But readers are leaders. And one thing we should encourage our children to do is to spend at least a few hours every day reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent some time homeschooling those of my grandchildren who live within driving distance. As a matter of fact, this very morning, I spent 3 hours with those youngsters who range in age from 9 to 16. And I try to whet their appetite on the things that they need to read and give them a variety of interests and topics. Everything from the history of Rome to American literature to military issues. I've got the 11-year-old reading Sun Tzu and Clausewitz and that kind of thing, and it's good for them. Well, let's go back to your survey, which you did with the Zogby organization. And again, the results are quite interesting. I found question number 11 especially interesting. The question was this: Mexican officials, gun control groups, and officials at the Department of Homeland Security claim drug cartels are crossing the U.S. border in order to obtain guns illicitly. Others say that the Mexican drug cartels are equipped with military hardware, including grenades, anti-tank missiles, and mortars, all weapons that are not available to the American public. Which of the following do you think is the main source for Mexican drug cartel arms? And here is the range of choices: U.S. gun stores, international black market, somewhere else, not sure. what pleased and surprised me was people, 65% saying it was the international black market.
Right.
How do you explain that?
Well, I think that the average American really isn't stupid. Now, one thing I want to say about the people who took this poll, the majority voted for Obama. You know, statistically, this is a poll that...
So he's out of sync with his own constituency.
He's out of sync with his own constituency. And I think the average American citizen knows that they could not go to a gun store and purchase these guns that are being talked about in Mexico. They know they know that the Russians and the Chinese and the North Korean are selling guns to any criminal who wants to buy them. And I think they also know that well, they don't know, but the Mexican government keeps saying these guns come from you, but they refuse to release the serial numbers of the guns. And they don't release the serial numbers of the guns because it would prove the guns do not come from the United States, come from Russia or China.
What are you doing to publicize the results of this survey?
Well, I've got my own newsletter, which is called the O'Leary Report. We'll have everything in there, and we get a pretty good coverage when we release these numbers in both TV and print. Probably, on average, over 1,000 news sources will pick up the press release, and it'll be a multiple press release. So we won't try to say here's 12 things and do them all at one time.
Were any of the results of your questions surprising to you?
Well, when I wrote the book, we did a lot of questions beforehand about what the American public really thought and about what changes they would be comfortable with that Obama wanted. And there was a disconnect. He never told people what he actually was going to do. And the American public never really wanted what he's going to do. So
yes, we can and change were the code words.
So it's not as if I'm totally surprised on the abortion issue. I'm a Catholic. I was drastically...
Notre Dame used to be Catholic.
Oh, it used to be
But
Catholic.
now their commencement speaker is Barack Obama.
Well, Notre Dame is filled with quislings now. Yeah. And what you have in the Catholic Church is too many bishops and too many cardinals who voted for Obama. And they're part of the reason that Catholics voted for a man who's committed to killing children. And can I talk about killing?
Yeah, he's the most pro-abortion president in history.
Years ago, I wanted John to ask a question, and it was
John
Zogby. In one of our polls, do you believe abortion is murder? John convinced me to change it and ask it, do you believe that abortion is manslaughter, which, as you know, is the same thing as murder? We asked that and found that 57% of the American public, and this is like 10, 12 years ago, believed that abortion was murder or manslaughter. The New York Times called him up, the editor did, and beat him up over being in business with a right-wing zealot and asking such a stupid question. They asked the question themselves 3 weeks later and got the same number. So, let's put it straight. This is what this man is doing.
We still have a right-of-center country facing a left-of-center president. We have to take a break. We'll be back right after these messages with some parting shots from Brad O'Leary. Please stay with us.
Hi, I'm United States Representative Thaddeus McCotter from Michigan's 11th Congressional District. As we enter a new millennium of hope and peril, with so many problems besetting our country and yet so many opportunities before us, it is oftentimes tempting to think that your voice doesn't matter. What can one person do to make a difference in the life of their community and their country? Well, the first thing you can do is to contact your legislator. You are one of the sovereign citizens of the United States. You elect your servants to work for you in Congress. Let them know what you think. Send them a letter, send them an email, call them on the phone. Your voice matters, because if you don't raise your voice in the interest of our free republic, who will?
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips, Chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors this program, Conservative Roundtable. If you're interested in the kinds of issues we discuss on Conservative Roundtable, I hope you'll check out our website, www.conservativeusa.org. If without cost or obligation, you'd like to receive some of our literature, my twice-monthly newsletter, the Issues and Strategy Bulletin, our members' message, please fax us your name and address. Our fax number is 703-281-4108, or by snail mail, write to us at 450 Maple Avenue East, Vienna, Virginia, 22180. We've been privileged to have as our guest the author of this very worthy book, The Audacity of Deceit, Brad O'Leary. And this book, sadly, predicts everything that Obama has begun to do. Give us some parting thoughts.
Well, if you're sitting at home listening to us while you watch this program, you lost some of your freedoms. And while you're watching this program now, some of the moral values that you want to pass on to your children or your grandchildren are being destroyed in this country. It's time maybe to join one of the tea parties that are being put together, or to join a local organization, or become part again of America to take America back. It's not too late, but it may be if you don't listen.
Brad, we really appreciate your being with us. We hope that your book continues to be successful. We appreciate all of the things that you do for the cause. I hope the media picks up the results of your survey, which are fascinating. Mm-hmm. This survey predicts a colossal Democratic Party defeat in 2010 because it emphasizes the disparity between what the American people believe and what the Democrats are doing.
But we have to turn people out for that defeat to become a reality.
Very good. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for watching Roundtable. Please continue to be a visitor to Conservative Roundtable. See you next time.